Hey guys, thank you so much for having me, and I'm so glad that Dave just gave that little introduction, because you guys are probably thinking, oh, he's probably some motivational guy from business or something. He's actually a heroin addict who spent 17 years out there on the streets, causing a lot of pain, hurt, misery to both myself and my family. Haven't had a drink or a drug for 13 years, 6 months and 2 days. A lot's changed in that time. So that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. Now, I should tell you why I'm sitting on the chair, first of all, right? I fell out of the third story window, done some damage. I cut my Achilles tendon in half, it sprung up my leg. Easter Sunday back in about 2000, they had to operate on it. I broke my femur in a motorbike accident where I was in a coma for 3 weeks, and I also broke my knee just 2 years ago on a skateboard incident at the age of 45, so please excuse me for sitting down. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and I've got a bit of show and tell. I don't know if this is appropriate, but considering that this is actually my criminal record here, it's 20 pages long. I guess it's probably a lengthy document. I don't know what an average criminal who's spent 15 years. It's kind of like I'm kind of proud of that. Anyway, I shouldn't say that, but I'm going to just leave that there in case anyone did want to take a look at it. And I guess it adds some, truth to. I haven't been charged, by the way, since 2005. So that's definitely a miracle, because I couldn't stay out of jail basically for longer than 2 months throughout that time. But look, really my story is about how drug addiction, alcohol impacted my life and the families and my family, and also just to just say that drugs and alcohol ruined my life, but I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for that stuff, doing something I love with all my heart around sharing my stories around the social and emotional impacts that addiction can have on myself. So look, I'll just kick it off at the beginning. I was just a young kid at the age of 14. I picked up alcohol. I picked up alcohol, picked up cigarettes. My family had fallen apart. My mum and my dad. My dad is a bit of a crim himself, right? He taught me everything I shouldn't know, but my mum, beautiful, loving mum, taught me all the beautiful values and morals that I have today, So I've come from a bit of and mum and dad, I don't know how mum put up with dad for so long, to be honest, but by the age of 14 they'd separated, and they were trying one last hurrah. Everyone can hear me, alright? I'm speaking loud, they had tried one last hurrah, where one last crack at trying to work it out for the children, not for us, not for them, and we moved up to Bundaberg. And that day, the day I arrived in Bundaberg, I knew a kid who was a little bit older than me who'd moved up there about a year beforehand. And the night I arrived there, or the day I arrived there, this is the way I remember it, I was introduced to alcohol, pot, so marijuana, and this thing they called nitric oxide, nangs, stupid shit. And that night, we're in this outdoor roller skating ring. It was closed down, it was like abandoned. It was like this party for a bunch of older kids. And I found myself basically passed out on this outdoor roller skating ring. And when I came to, there was like bodies and glass laying around everywhere. And I remember thinking, that was fun, let's do it again. And that's kind of where my career of abusing substances began. I don't exactly know why. We talk about addiction and alcoholism being in the family, like a family disease. I don't know if anyone's heard that stuff. Like I said, my mum was this beautiful, loving mum. My dad definitely had a lot of defects going on, but I don't really identify as being an alcoholic or an addict before I picked up substances. But the day I did, I never stopped for the next 17 years. Over the next few months, I found myself getting involved in amphetamines, starting to drink regularly, smoking pot regularly. I was kicked out of school at a young age. I was expelled from school at the age of 14, and I guess that's important to mention as well, because I'd never had a real formal education like that, and that might have contributed to my chaos. And anyway, look, picked up all those substances. I thought I'd never touch heroin, you know. I was scared of it. And I moved back to Sydney. Well, actually, I should just say, Mum and Dad wasn't working out up there in Bundaberg for them to. I basically manipulated the situation and told my mum that maybe she should move back to Sydney. I could tell she wasn't happy with my dad, and my sister had a sister as well. This is the cunning nature of this young kid, right? I said, Mum, you should just go back to Sydney, and then I knew she'd leave me with my dad. My dad kind of let me do anything. She moved back to Sydney. Then me and my dad were up there, and my dad used to travel overseas a lot. He used to go to the Philippines, back and forth, and a couple of other countries. I don't know exactly what he was up to, but he wasn't up to anything real good. And he'd go away. Every time he'd come back from being away, I'd be kicked out of a new apartment that we were in. It happened 3 times in a row. One time he come home, he threw me through the wall, and I deserved it, don't worry. This is messed up stuff. Could you imagine a father walking in on his kid, sucking on this nitric oxide gas? I'm 14, 15 years old by this time. Get off my head. I don't know what I would have been doing, and I guess he just panicked, and he just grabbed me and shook me, and he threw me at the wall, and my room was on the other side, and I actually remember going through that wall. So there was a little bit of domestic violence too, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that it was a perfect childhood, but he threw me through the wall, and I remember waking up or coming out of that unconsciousness. It's only seconds, but being on my bed and just thinking, fuck, look at that hole in the wall. And also that same day, I don't know if he threw me into it or I bumped into it. There was a big fish tank with fish. We smashed that as well. That was enough. He'd had enough after that. He moved back to Sydney, and I said, you go, Tony. I called him Tony as well. I never called him Dad. From the age I was born, I could talk. He told me to call him Tony, and he's my real dad, but he moved back to Sydney, so I was left to fend for myself, I guess, as a 15-year-old kid in a town up in Bundaberg. A lot of kids were sort of on it back then, drinking a lot of alcohol, and that's kind of where it all began. You know, I don't ever talk about my childhood as being bad. I don't identify it as being bad, but I didn't last for that long up there, and I eventually come back down to Sydney. I was 16. I was almost 16 years old. I bumped into a mate that actually I think I just met him, Brad. It's funny because in that criminal record sheet I noticed there's about 15 aliases, and one of the names is Bradley Frankovich, and that was my mate, and I used his name occasionally, hoping he wouldn't have warrants, you know. And as it happened, one time he had warrants, and I used his name. And I got charged under that name, and I spent the next 18 months in prison under Frankovich. So obviously the police were the ones that they knew who I was. They fingerprinted me that, but they charged me under that name for the next 18 months in prison. If I got visits, if someone come to visit Danny Shannon, I wasn't on record. My MIN number was the same, but anyway, that's just but Brad, me and him started smoking heroin. Now, look, I just want to say, I'm sitting at the front of this drug dealer's house in Abbotsbury, it's out west, in a yellow Gemini. Fuck, it must be, I'm 16 years old, I don't know how long ago that was. You don't see those Geminis around these days. And I was sitting there and we were about to buy some heroin, and I remember thinking, this is a bad idea. You know, I didn't want to, I was scared. I remember being scared, and really peer pressure played a big part of this, and we got on. And next thing you know, I'm sitting in this dingy little flat in Cabramatta with no furniture, with the drug dealer Wok. You probably know him, Wok. Anyway, and he was injecting heroin into my arm. And look, if up until that point there'd been trouble in my life, it started that day. You know, that was really the beginning of the end. The next 17 years, well, the next 15 years, I found myself locked up in Cobham Boys Home at the age of 16. Back then, warrants would be $100 a day. I'd had a bunch of warrants, and you could get locked up. And my family, by that time too, I'd already been in a bit of trouble. I guess my family had no money either, but there were times that they bailed me out. But I also needed to maybe learn a lesson, which never worked. You know, I was locked up in boys' homes. I spent my 18th birthday in Parramatta prison. Just a young kid in Parramatta prison, got bashed on my first time in there. I should share why. I was in the reception. I don't know if you guys have been out to Parramatta jail. It's an old school reception. Cells over here, and the reception office is over here. And anyway, there's two sides. There's the ones that have been processed and the ones that have just come in. And old mate passed me a packet of cigarettes that he'd obviously got through the coppers and knew he was probably going to lose them there. Passed them to me and I smoked them. This guy was a criminal and been around, and I just started smoking cigarettes. And once I got into the actual units, I ended up getting into a big altercation around that. And you know, so it was a pretty scary introduction to that stuff. Between the age of 18 and 28, I spent the majority of that time in prison. My crimes, just for the record, were breaking in. It was all drug-related offences. I actually had no violence in my crime, and as it happens, I pleaded guilty to everything that I did. I was never someone to fight. And I've got to say too, like, I never had a grudge with the police either. I swear, I'm not just saying that, right, because I'm here. I never had a grudge. I was always very, you know, accepting of my wrongs. Like, I knew I was on this path of destruction. I kind of always put my hand up, and that probably meant that I found myself in a lot more, well, probably a lot more prison than necessary. In 2009, I had attempted about 50 rehabilitation attempts by that time. I was on drug court. They used to send me out to rehab, William Booth, all these different rehabs, detoxes. And because I had this beautiful, loving mum who wanted me to be okay, I used to just try it. And I'd try and I'd go into these places and then I'd leave. The minute I'd straighten up, I would get sober, I'd leave the places. And finally, in 2009, I entered my very last detox. It was Herbert Street Clinic. I'd been there before. Actually, there's this awesome lady, Leslie, who, whilst I was on drug court, I escaped from Silverwater Prison back in 2001. I managed to scale the 24-foot barrel fence. I should throw this in, I want to share this, right? Scaled the 24-foot barrel fence, and I got caught while I was up on the barrels by Mr. Singh doing a perimeter search, one of the officers in the jail, and I had to run down. I launched off the fence, broke my arm, black and blue from here to here. I swam across Parramatta River bleeding from the razor wire. They reckon there's bull sharks in Parramatta River. Like, I was swimming up fast. It was pitch dark. There was water police. There was police. There was the dog squad. There was the MEU, that's the jail squad. And I managed to get away. I was a lot more agile back then. I currently weigh 102 kilos. Back then I was 65 kilos. And I can't... you would imagine the adrenaline, what adrenaline can do, but wow, I can't believe I got away. Anyway, I did. I got caught on the 14th of February with my partner in Western Australia and my unborn son, who she was pregnant with. And I say it's such a romantic story because we got caught on Valentine's Day. Got my ass ripped out of the hotel. They kicked the door in. I honestly thought, and I think this is true, I thought the warrants wouldn't carry in a state, which I think that's true, but guess what? New South Wales detectives come and got me. So, and they found me and they dragged my ass out poolside naked like at 4:30 a.m. And I put up a bit of a fight. There was a bit of a tussle. All the residents of the hotel are out there. Big deal, you know. And, anyway, I got caught. All right. back to getting clean. I entered my last detox on the 15th of September 2009. So this is after 17 years of being a lost, empty soul, you know, hurting a lot of people, a lot of jail, and also being always putting my hand up for everything I'd done. You know, I was kind of this kind of really accepting guy. I was in detox for my last time. I took drugs in with me, of course. Every single time I went to detox, I don't know, this is what addicts do, right? I took drugs in there, and then I ran out, of course, and then I thought, well, this is the point that I have to make a big decision to turn my life around. And it's not as if that's what I thought back then, but I didn't. I managed to complete that detox. I went onto a program called Foundation House. It's a short-term program. It's funded by the CFMEU. It's a builders union who also have a lot of drug and alcohol issues in their field. And I'd done that program, and then I went to a place called Glebe House, funded by Corrective Services. Actually, I don't know if anyone knows. I worked there eventually for 10 years, but I was a client there back in 2009. And it was Christmas Day 2009, and my family had invited me to come home. Now, to be honest, I'd caused so much carnage to my family. I didn't want to go, but all these people were talking about family at Christmas time. I was such a selfish, self-centered, self-seeking person. I didn't care back then at all. But the boss said, no, Danny, you can't go. And I was in this room, this counselling room. I'm 60 days clean. I haven't had a drink or a drug for 60 days. My feelings are really present. I'm in this counselling room crying because I had Mum wanting me to come, the boss saying, no, you can't go. I'm kind of in relief, I think. And she comes in by accident. She says, oh, she said me crying. She was Scottish. She said in her accent, Danny, you can go. And anyway, on my way out to family that day, I stopped off at Cabramatta. Unbelievable, yeah? This is the obsession and compulsion of addiction, why I can't, and I guess I'm sharing this just to, maybe you guys have never understood or not understood how powerful that is, but I'm 60 days absent, and my life's starting to come around. I've got this massive chance ahead of me, and I get off the train at Cabramatta to get on my way out to see my family, to buy heroin. And that day, for some reason, Christmas Day, I don't know if the Vietnamese practice the whole Christmas spirit, but there was no dealers on the street. Back in the day, it was ridiculous. Like, Cabramatta was just flooded with heroin everywhere. I'm sure you know that. And there was no fucking dealers around. And anyway, I got Mum and my son ringing me saying, Dad, where are you? Oh, like, that breaks my heart. Like, when I say that. And anyway, I went home. I managed to not do it. Like, it never happened to me. I couldn't get on. I went home, then I'm sitting around the family Christmas table with 15 family members, neighbours, and I've hurt, probably stolen and robbed from every single one of them people, right? The shame and guilt, and deserving, of course, but the shame and guilt just made me sick. And it always did. Like, it's a powerful, guilt and shame has this real heavy emotion. It makes me tired, it makes me want to go to sleep, basically. It's one of the things that happens. And on my way home to the rehab that day, I thought, I can't do this. I'm standing at King's Cross, Town Hall Station. King's Cross is to my right, William Street. I can see the Coca-Cola sign. You know, I know for sure the drug dealers are going to be up there, 100%. And on the other side of the road was the bus going back to the rehab. And that day, I stood at the turning point and I thought, if I go up there to the cross, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get stoned, I'm going to end up back in jail, I might end up back in rehab, could end up dead for sure, but I didn't know what would happen if I got on that bus across the other side of the road. I'd never done that. And yeah, that day I made a different decision for the first time in my life. I didn't pick up that next drug, and I went and got on the bus and went back to rehab, and a miracle happened that day, Christmas Day 2009. I lost the obsession and compulsion to use drugs completely. It was just lifted from me. And I haven't come close to picking up another drink or a drug since that time. Now, I'd say, talk about drink and drug, because for me, an addict, alcoholic. I never really drank, but it's the same thing. Alcohol is a drug for me, you know. I predict if I have a drink, and I have tried this because I did a geographical to Fiji once there because I thought there was no drugs, and I became an alcoholic overnight. I was drinking Fiji bitter by 8 a.m. in the morning because I couldn't buy heroin or anything else. So I consider myself to be an alcoholic as well, but yeah, so that obsession had left me, and I don't want to just say it was gone like that. I've worked my ass off over that time, you know. I've been involved in a lot of service, this kind of thing I would definitely call service, you know, sharing the message with other people out there. My journey of recovery has been incredible. I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I have been for the entire time. And that place definitely saved my life. Like, I learned so many tools, tricks and hacks to sort of learn how to live. I didn't have a problem with drugs and alcohol, I had a problem with life. Living life on life's terms without a substance, that was my problem. Being able to handle, you know, in the 13 years I've been sober, I've lost about 100 people dead from heroin overdose, so a couple of alcohol related incidences, suicide. That stuff definitely played a big toll on my life, and the last 13 years I've continued moving forward. I started doing some study. I heard in the bio that I studied community services. I went to uni even though I got kicked out of school in year 8, and I worked in that rehab funded by Corrective Services, working with high-risk offenders coming out of jail. Some of them you guys would definitely know, who have been locked up for like 20 years. Some of the guys become 20 years, and guess what? Like, I had this ability to connect with these guys because where I'd been probably, but also because I definitely knew some of their friends, you know. So I'd be able to sort of build rapport and make these guys feel a little bit comfortable. I'm not saying I was good at it, but I stayed there for 10 years, and in that time I worked with hundreds of clients, and I was able to connect with those guys. And some of them men are good friends of mine today, and who have completely turned their life around too. I should just say that I represent thousands of people, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I represent thousands of people in recovery who have completely turned their lives around, like my friend Jess as well, and that hundreds of other people I know and I see regularly who are absolutely killing it, who don't use drugs or commit crime or drink alcohol anymore as well, you know. And I don't know that those guys are represented out there in the community as much as they should be. I've found a voice through social media. I started sharing my stories about 6 years ago. I was sitting in my office at work. I was a milestone. I just turned 7 years clean, I think, right? I was really excited. I was full of gratitude. I'm sitting on the opposite side of the desk where I was once a client. And I thought to myself, I wonder what I was like when I entered those doors back in 2009. I wonder, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? And I came up with this concept, this idea to record a video, just like that camera there. I set up a video camera. I did a little bit of research around some questions that I could answer, and I wanted to record a message to my future self for my 10-year birthday, which is exactly what I did. I started the camera rolling. I started answering some questions that I had on paper, and immediately, as I was talking to my future self, has anyone here ever recorded a video to their future self? Or what about a letter? Has anyone written a letter to their future self back in the day? It's quite a unique concept, and the video was really unique. So I mean, this is me talking to myself 5 years down the track, and I spoke about my family. I hoped my family was okay. I hoped I was okay. I started getting quite emotional. I set some goals for myself that I've been incredibly blessed to have achieved all those goals, and I also acknowledge that this would be an amazing tool to be able to give to the clients coming through our services. A couple of years past, I received some amazing feedback, and I developed that idea into a web platform and a mobile app today called Encapsulated. It's a video journaling platform allowing individuals, loved ones, people wanting to send messages to their future self or their future children, an opportunity to record and document and capture the raw, unguarded essence of who they are today and send that message of love and hope to their future self. And that's exactly what I did back then. And when I turned 10 years clean, I watched that video, and I remember getting like goosebumps. If I watch it today, I still get goosebumps. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing today. I'm trying to help people measure their growth from a beginning of a journey of personal development through to the end, capturing the essence of who they are today and delivering a message to their future self. Guys, I'm just aware of the time too. I've got about another 7 minutes, I think. Right now. Is that good? Sure. Yeah, look, today, let's just skip to the good part, you know. I've got an incredible life today. I can't even get pulled over by coppers anymore, you know. It's like, once upon a time, I used to have this, maybe it was like an evil halo. It's like, I could not be driving a stolen car anywhere. It was impossible for me to drive past a copper without them just going and chucking it, chucking you. Like, it's like, I don't know, you guys are pretty intuitively, like, I honestly never drove past coppers without them chasing me. And I never surrendered either. I always put my foot down, and I've got to say, I've got to wait 50% of the time, you know. Back then I was pretty agile, I used to bounce fences quite quickly. I've had a few encounters with German Shepherds and dogs along the way too. But also, I've got to say too, I've also had police at the end of a chase, this is Cabramatta police, or maybe it was Livo, say to me, like, I had no tyres left in the car. I think I was on all four, sparks screaming around the road, and them say to me, like, they were impressed with the way I'd kept going. And actually those same coppers, after one big chase, see me at Liverpool Hospital with little, those little barnacles when you run through the grass. So I just had a chase and I got in the way, and I had all those little prongs in me, and they'd heard over the radio obviously that someone was in a chase and maybe they had to stop the expedite because it was getting too dangerous. And anyway, I'm walking through Liverpool Hospital thinking I'm sweet, and a couple of coppers who knew me had spotted me, and they ended up, I was locked up in Liverpool cells in no time. Sorry, I lost track there. Yeah, I've got an incredible life. I've travelled the world. I've had a couple of speaking engagements just recently where I've been able to go out to schools. Last week I spoke at a pub, at a brewery here, just up the road from here. Rickety's brewery, yeah. I went and shared some stories there. I'm connected with millions of people through my social media. I've been crazy to have over like a couple of 100,000 followers today between some of the social media platforms sharing my stories. And what happens is thousands of people reach out to me on a regular basis just asking for help, and I hope that Encapsulated, my mobile platform, is a tool that will help people do that. I'm a tech startup. Me and Jess work our asses off on that. We've come a long way, we've got a long way to go, and this kind of stuff gives me an opportunity to try and raise awareness around some of that stuff. I've got a beautiful 5-year-old daughter who is the most incredible gift in the world. My 21-year-old son, who escaped to Perth with me in his mother's stomach back in the day, hasn't gone down the same path. That kid visited me in jails and institutions for half of his life. Today he's knows his dad for the last 13 years as somebody who helps other people. And I just hope, and I want to give you guys an opportunity, if anyone has any questions, that I can just raise some awareness around that stuff. So thank you so much, guys. That's it, I'm done. Thank you.
It's a wonder I haven't come across you in the years. In the 80s and 90s, I spent 10 years as a detective in the drug squad. So I worked across, out of Cabramatta, and I worked everywhere.
Daniel Shannon,
sure. I'll tell you what, I don't know.
Sure.
And I came across a lot of addicts and drug dealers, drug takers in my police life. Some of them were informants, as you probably realise yourself. I had the satisfaction back before the drug squad when I was in the vice squad, and a mother rang up the vice squad one day and I was in there, and she said, "Oh, is that Detective Sergeant Bush?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And she said, "Look, I've been told I can trust you. and my daughter's heavily involved in drugs up across. So I'm just wondering if you could help me. So I won't go into all the details, but eventually between a mother and I and some rehab places, we were able to move her from Sydney up to Newcastle, where she wasn't in the same drug milieu as she was here. And eventually she got free of drugs, and I was invited to a wedding up at Newcastle, a suburb up there. And I still stay in touch with her over social media and with her mother. And during that time, I mean, as you probably could be aware, you get so involved. I was so heavily emotionally involved. I gave everything I could. I gave my free time after work. When I finished work, I'd go and help mother do stuff. And you are to be commended for your journey, for what you've done in your clean period, because I have had experience with your people, and if I can put it that way, you know, the drug takers, and that's what spurred me on in the drug squad to lock up drug dealers. That was my motivation. Besides that, I had 2 daughters, and I was never going to stop until I locked every drug dealer up. My motive was kids, like this 21-year-old kid. I found her in the Cross, and she was living in a place up there, and a bloke you may or may not have known, he may not have been around, there was a drug dealer up there called Mendo Stojanovski. He used to work at a hotel up there, and this girl's mother put me onto this bloke. Anyway, I did a lot of surveillance up there, and end up finding her in his room, naked, crawling around the floor, sores all over her, and he would give as much cocaine as she wanted, as long as he could root her.
Oh.
That was the deal, and that's how I found this girl. And it was just tragic to see a young girl's life being wasted like that. So, you know, I see where you come from, and I applaud you. And you too, Jess, if you're, I don't know anything about you, but if you're down that similar path, well then you are to be congratulated.
Yes, I'm 7 years.
We all know the bad stories, and we don't see what else happened. The last we often saw about them was when they took them out of the dock in the courts after Oscar had dealt with them, and that was the end of the story. And that's why I thought that this would be an interesting person for us to see. Somebody who, the other side of the story, beyond the black door, would have been probably a good name for today's talk, beyond the black door. Is anybody else? I know Danny's has spoken at, as he mentioned, at jails, prisons, and places like this, which is great to see. And hopefully other people who went down the same track he went down can be safe. Has anybody else got any questions here for Dan?
Sure.
Danny, you said that you travelled widely. How were you able to get into a lot of countries and say, don't really like people with big...
I lied on the visa, to be honest. Like, I think, look, as far as I'm concerned, I've been a good moral person in society for 13 years. I haven't committed, so to me it's not a lie. Yeah. There's only one country that's wrong with it, which is America, yeah. And really the questions on the visa is, have you ever committed serious harm to a person or property? No. Have I ever been convicted for drugs? Maybe, that was a long time ago. And the last one is like homicide or gendercide. So it's actually like pretty much, I just think no. Yeah, sure.
Teddy, have you thought about going around the Holocaust school?
Look,
Making that a mission?
I would love to. I've kind of just fallen into this position.
Yeah.
I'd love to. It's my passion. This is encapsulator is definitely something I've been grinding away with, and I love so much. But the thing that lights me up the most is, like, honestly, to be here with you guys today is incredible, isn't it? Like, think about it. I'm having a laugh with you about some of the shit that I did, and I'm also trying to share like hope as well. So yeah, I'd love to be able to do that, and I have spoken in 1 or 2 schools.
Because that's where it all starts. It's
Yeah.
what happened in Umbra,
Yeah,
like you.
changing.
And just because your family's a bit messy doesn't really, or should it really, have a connection with alcohol, but sometimes it does.
It definitely does, yeah, definitely. I think there needs to be a lot more awareness, and maybe even teachers with lived experience to be able to, because I think that's where it starts. If we can share little personal reasons why maybe they're sad at home or what they're copping at home, why they pick up drugs, I feel like that's where it starts, right? Yeah, I would love to do more of that.
With, sorry, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I do.
How many siblings?
I've got I've got a sister and I've got 2 half brothers. Yeah,
So-
younger.
Okay.
None of them
Were they
use
aware
drugs.
of your trajectory that you went on?
Everyone was aware of what
So
trajectory, yeah.
they didn't go down any same
Nah,
path.
very lucky. But my sister drinks alcohol, wine every night. I don't know how happy she is exactly. I think all this stuff plays a role. But nah, not like me. I'm kind of the black sheep in my family. But if you look at my dad, I think it stems from my dad, right? He definitely has
No
history.
I was going to say, Dan, that when you mentioned there that you've been in chases and you've got away, that there would have been a few in here who would have thought, if you'd been over this side of the Harbour Bridge, you wouldn't have it.
That's so funny. Hilarious.
What Deb said about schools is good, but I think maybe we could, as an association, I think this sort of talk would be good. Like, we're all retired, we've been there, we've chased people like you, and, you know.
Yeah.
I was a cyclist, and I worked in Cabramatta a long time.
Yeah, wow.
Chasing people.
Yeah.
It would be a good lecture to a class at Goldman. You know, this is what, you know, you see the groups, but this is the other side of the story for them at the start. I mean, we've all chased it before, you know, and we understand now. You
When
know,
you go through the academy.
Yeah.
Just a quick.
I would love to.
Just curious with your, with the business.
Yeah, thank you.
How many people have you got hooked into it?
Yeah, look, probably 500,
Okay.
which is nowhere near enough. Like, we're just developing our version 3, our new app is about to be released, and we've hoped to get like 100,000 by Christmas, so 500 is not enough to build that data.
No, but there is an appetite for people wanting to do that.
I got funding from the government too, so they even approved it, I guess. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a space for this. You can imagine maybe anyone here wanting to leave a message, a raw, unguarded video message for a future generation. And often we don't do that. Like, it's easy to say, I could just do that on my phone, whatever, but you won't. That's the thing. Our programs have questions that pop up on screen that guide you to create the right answers and to talk about the specific things as well.
And it's cloud-based.
Yeah, it's all cloud. It's safe and secure. It belongs to you. Only the data will never be used for any other reason. Yeah. A couple of challenges actually. That's tough. Yes,
Yeah.
You've been an ex-academy instructor from Goldman.
Yeah.
I could see you in a class of police trainees with your tats, with your criminal record, telling them what sort of a job they've got in front of them. That you'll have a wrestle with them, you'll try and get away with them, you've got to be fit because we're going to give you a hard time.
Yeah.
And it'd make these young constables maintain their fitness and realise what they're facing. Because there's hundreds of you blokes out on the street that think the police are like shit. And you'd really motivate these young fellas, and there'd probably a few that get up and walk out of the class and think, I don't think I could do this.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's good.
And I was a really well-behaved prim too, trust me. Like, and I know a lot of people that, like you just said, that there's some animals out there too, you know. And I know, like, of course, I know some of them people really well. Yeah, look, I'd love.
Well,
to.
these young blokes will probably go through their career and never bump into a bloke like you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But you could, you'd frighten the daylights out of them.
I'd love. Look, again, yes, please. If any of these opportunities can come up, I'd love to be linked in with those. Thanks, guys. Like, I really appreciate. I understand it's a bit of a unique perspective, and I love the fact that I'm still able to sort of build a little bit of rapport. You know, like, yeah, this is my passion.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yep. We'll do that for a sec. Hang. Look, I know we can't give you a bottle of scotch. But Dan, these are very special. This is the only branch in the whole of the RFPA that has these. You know,
Or are they saying like...
that have these mugs, these coffee mugs. They're for coffee. They're not for port and pour that in. But
that's what happens when you come in recovery. You drink a lot of
yeah,
coffee.
thank you so much. It's not much, but it's a little token of our appreciation.
Yeah, I love it.
Here we go.
Great.
Terrific.
Thank you.